Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome in to tonight's stream. We got a very special presentation for you tonight. We are once again live here from the DraftKings Sportsbook at Foxwoods Casino out in Connecticut. I've got the birthday boy himself right here with me, my dad, Eric. And it is 9 p.m. over here on the East Coast, which means that it is time for Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much for tuning in, taking some time out of your busy schedule amidst all this World Cup extravaganza that we've got going on to talk shop about what goes on in the indoor football world. For those of you who are new to either this channel in particular or the Indoor Football League as a whole, I want to warmly welcome you aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan, very passionate about the indoor football game. That is a passion that I've channeled into my current role as lead IFL contributor for a sports forum site called Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes specifically in the coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14 member teams. Each week, our staff brings you up-to-date rosters, breaking news as it develops, game previews, game recaps, wide variety of other analysis out there. If you call yourself a fan of the Indoor Football League, Sports Coast to Coast is a must-have as a go-to destination for your daily download of all things IFL related. Present results, past results, it's basically an entire library dating back as far as the 2015-2016 season. So fantastic resource to have. I've linked the site below in the description, so check it out when you can. It is there where you'll also find the written version of my Wager Wednesday piece, which I published earlier this morning. So if you're not the video type, you're more the reading type, you got that option there for you as well. So while I get the next segment up here, let's see, why is this not showing up? Give me 1 second, guys. There we go. And now we'll bring that over here. Us over here. Fantastic. So we are now officially in the home stretch of the 2026 regular season. We enter week 16. So most of the IFL has played 12 games in the season to this point, with the exception of the Fishers Freight, who have played 13, and the San Diego Strike Force, who have played 11. So anywhere between 3 and 5 games left for the 14 teams in the league to either continue their march towards a playoff spot, or in the case of some of the bottom barrel teams, trying to build up some results, get some wins, form some positive momentum heading into next season. So we'll dive right on in here. Week 15, we had 6 fantastic games, multiple of which could be playoff previews down the line. We had upsets. We had games go right down to the wire. And we have a new top team in the Western Conference. So we'll talk about each of those 6 games in the detail that they deserve. We'll go over some season-long statistics as well, recap our specific results in terms of our bet types. We'll go over straights, parlays, mortal megas, moneyline spreads and totals, as we've done for the past 4-ish months already. Continue to pick out those patterns that we've seen from those results to kind of guide our bets moving forward. Once we recap and reflect and add everything there, we'll go dive right in to week 16. We have all 14 teams in action, 7 games on the schedule, 4 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. We'll preview each one of those, highlight what to watch out for with all those. We'll come up with some predictions. We'll cook up another 3-leg parlay in pursuit of redemption after each of our past 2 attempts fell at the last leg. And once we build that up, I've got a very special announcement for you that'll come at the conclusion of tonight's stream. So stick around for that. All righty, let's go over week 15 here quickly. We started off with Friday's standalone game, which was between the Vegas Nighthawks and the San Diego Strikeforce. This, a battle for the number 1 spot and provisional hold of the tiebreaker in the Western Conference. And what a surprise at the start of this game was, as the San Diego defense spearheads an effort that leads to a 16-0 lead early for the San Diego Strikeforce. Vegas, the championship caliber team that they are, battling back. They get it to within 5 at the half. They end up taking the lead in the fourth quarter. Unfortunately for Vegas, that lead lasted basically 1 or 2 plays, depending on whether or not you count the kickoff that gave San Diego the ball. They score an immediate touchdown right away. They stall Vegas on a critical drive with about 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They add a little bit of insurance with a field goal. But Vegas, no game is over in this league until the final whistle sounds. They score a touchdown to cut it to within 4. An onside kick recovery with 30 seconds to go. Unfortunately for them, one last heave resulted in a reception by Josh Tomas that came up 6 yards short of what would have been the game-winning touchdown. So second straight week where Vegas had an opportunity on the final play, couldn't quite punch it home. But San Diego, very impressive under Taylor Geneser, the Strikeforce, taking command at 9-2 at the number 1 seed in the Western Conference now. They defeat the Vegas Nighthawks 43-39. Our Vegas minus 325 moneyline bet ends up as a loss, which kind of got our week off on a little bit of a wrong foot. Saturday, we had 3 games, starting in Fishers, Indiana, with the Freight hosting the Iowa Barnstormers. This game, it's been a rough season for the Iowa Barnstormers, to say the least, and Saturday's game was much of the same, unfortunately. Fishers, with Josiah King at running back, filling in for the injured Dominic Roberto. King, living up to that name, ruling the day with 4 first-half touchdowns. That helped get the Freight ahead to a 35-13 halftime lead. Those 13 points that Iowa had through the first 30 minutes was all that they would get for the remainder of the game, as the Freight defense didn't fool around. They kept Iowa pretty much stagnant as they continued searching for answers at quarterback. Dante Avila Santos having his fair share of struggles. Noah Bodden unable to really move the ball in his first action as an IFL signal caller. And all Fishers really needed to do was run out the rest of the clock, keep the mistakes to a minimum, and they were able to get out of here with a relatively easy 55-13 blowout victory over the Iowa Barnstormers. So we chinched out, we took the money line, but if nothing else, it snapped a 6-bet losing streak and set the tone the rest of the way for us. The 8 o'clock game on Saturday was between the San Antonio Gunslingers and the Tulsa Oilers. This series has been dominated by Tulsa and head coach Marvin Jones, and Saturday night was no different, as the Oilers keep up their hot offensive and defensive form. TJ Edwards, along with that offense featuring Jerminic Smith, TJ Davis, Caleb Ramzier, they pretty much went par for the course here. Maybe under par if you think about it that way as well. They got out to another big lead at halftime, 34-7. We've seen them do that on a number of times this season amidst their hot streak. And rough second start for Zach Calzada as San Antonio's quarterback. In fact, he ended up getting ejected alongside Trey Harvey of the Tulsa Oilers for some after-the-whistle shenanigans right around the 1-minute warning of the fourth quarter. Not exactly a consequential loss for either team at that juncture in the contest. It was well out of hand by that point. The Oilers win their 5th overall this season, their 6th consecutive game against the San Antonio Gunslingers specifically. It winds up as a 54-23 victory to put the Oilers, to keep them in a tie with the Orlando Pirates for 3rd place in the Eastern Conference. Orlando currently with the tiebreaker there. Our final game of Saturday night was an in-state Arizona showdown between the Rattlers and the Tucson Sugar Skulls. One really hot team in Tucson hosting their bitter in-state rival. First time that these two teams have actually met since earlier in the season back in Glendale when the Sugar Skulls looked much different than what they look like right now. In the case of this game, the start couldn't have been better for the Arizona Rattlers. They get a couple early interceptions off Jerome Johnson, a couple quick touchdowns on the other end. They had themselves an early 14-0 lead. But Tucson, they recovered from that bad start nicely. They punched back both sides of the ball. They stringed together a nice rally where they were only down by 4 at halftime. From that point on, Tucson took the lead with a touchdown on their opening drive of the second half, and they ended up returning the favor on defense with 3 interceptions off Drew Powell in the final 30 minutes, including 2 in Arizona's final 2 possessions that really helped the Sugar Skulls pave their way to a rally victory. So for a second straight week, Tucson wins as double-digit underdogs. They get back to an even 6-6 record on the season, thanks to Saturday's 35-28 win over the Arizona Rattlers. So our Saturday was perfect with a couple of favorites on the money line. We pivoted well-timed with Tucson on the spread in Saturday's nightcap, which brings us to Sunday's games. We had a battle of one-win teams. Northern Arizona heading to New Mexico to take on the Chupacabras, trying to put a 14-game losing streak on the road to bed were the Wranglers. Now, Northern Arizona got off to the better start. Anthony Garrett looked very fluid offensively once more, leads 4 touchdown drives for the Wranglers. The Chupacabras under Donovan Portery pretty much could only muster half of that, and it was the Wranglers with a 27-15 halftime lead. It was a completely different Chupacabra defense, though, in those final 30 minutes under interim coach Jerome Haywood, making his head coaching debut for New Mexico after the Chupacabras let go of Kyle Moore Brown earlier in the week. While the offense needed a little bit of time to pick up, their defense kept the Chupacabras firmly in this game. They limited Northern Arizona to a grand total of 5 second-half points, including a big stop in the fourth quarter when they were down by 10 with about 9 minutes to go. They're able to bruise their way in for 2 touchdowns, including the go-ahead score with 16 seconds left by running back LaJames White. The Wranglers had just enough time to kind of bail themselves out, potentially get a tying field goal to force the game into overtime, but unfortunately, fan favorite Manny Higuera not able to boot the attempt through for the Wranglers in what was an interesting but choppy game at the same time. The Chupacabras put an end to an 8-game losing streak. They defeat the Wranglers 35-32 to finally pry themselves out of the bottom of the Western Conference cellar. So massive win for New Mexico, getting that fire head coach boost that a lot of people like to throw out there in the CFL and the NFL level, but we see it here in the IFL, at least for this past week. We wrap things up with our Week 15 recaps with the Jacksonville Sharks doing battle with the Orlando Pirates for the second time this season. The first time that these two longtime rivals have done battle in Orlando. And the theme of this week for Jacksonville was change and transition. James Cahoon leaving the team. That opens the door up for Sammy Edwards to start at quarterback. I know that the Sharks in particular have been hyping him up as a legitimate IFL option moving forward. The first half was a little bit rough for him, though. Only leading 1 touchdown drive, throwing a bit of a back-breaking interception late in the second quarter. And for the Orlando offense under Paxton DeLaurent, it was just business as usual. And Orlando building a 20-point, 27-7 halftime lead. And their offense continuing that stellar form, and they needed every bit of it as Edwards and the Sharks offense were able to put some good stuff together. Jaden Stoshak with multiple scores as part of that sequence. But in the end, Jacksonville needed a stop, and they simply could not provide one as part of any substantial effort to rally back. So it is the Orlando Pirates, after getting absolutely belted by 28 in Jacksonville earlier this season. They returned the favor by getting a big win over the Sharks, 54-42. So Orlando improving to 7-5. Jacksonville now at 9-3. And the Pirates keep their slim hopes at potentially hosting a playoff game firmly alive. So that was the recap of the week that was. Our bets went 4-2 for the week, including the first time I've won a Sunday bet since 1997, it seems. But it's a positive result, 4-2 for the week. That helps bridge our gap in our yearly record, which sits now at 40 wins and 44 losses. We got the Mortal Megamax victory with Tucson on the spread. Not the first time that we've been successful going with that. So 8-7 on the weekly plays of the week. So still a lot of work to do, but sometimes this momentum has to be built up slowly. And hopefully that springboards to something substantial, maybe even as soon as this week. So we will have to see what happens there. As I mentioned earlier, our 3-leg parlay met doom at the final leg, and once again, it was a Northern Arizona game. So a little bit disheartening. The Strike Force won as the underdogs to get the attempt going. We had a late 2-point conversion in the San Antonio-Tulsa game save us in a game that featured a total of 77 points. Now, Northern Arizona and New Mexico, they combined for 42 first-half points, well on pace to break the over at 79.5, but unfortunately, Northern Arizona's offense really stumbling in those last 30 minutes of that game. New Mexico didn't have to do much, relatively speaking, to get the comeback, but they score what they needed to. They get just enough to rally for a 35-32 win. Would have been really nice to get the touchdown or the field goal at the end to prop this to overtime. Had a decent chance of cashing if we did get that bailout, but unfortunately was not meant to be. So our next attempt for this week is going to try to make that third time the charm mantra ring fully true. So even though we didn't get this parlay attempt to go, we combined with our buddies Trey from Off the Wall and Cody from In the Alley to cook up a successful, terrific triumvirate. This is our third successful collaborative parlay of the season. Trey had my Mortal Mega at Tucson plus 15.5. Cody had the over at 75.5. And I backed the Pirates as home favorites, which historically has been a really strong bet. Fortunately for all three of us, each of our individual legs held up, and we cashed a plus 595 winner. So our second terrific triumvirate win this month. We've got one last chance to make it a true triumvirate of June parlay wins. So hoping for the best there. An illustration quickly here of our year-to-date net gain and loss. So we had a good week last week, more wins than losses, but again, we kind of relied a little bit on favorites on the money line, which isn't necessarily the most efficient path to sudden net gain. So this week we're going to try to get a little bit more creative to see if we can maybe find some potential underdogs to back. So be on the lookout for that. Here are our yearly results by bet so far. The first thing that I'll talk about here, and it's been a mainstay of our discussions in this segment, home teams have been cooking. And last week, the quintessential example of that. All 6 home teams winning, all 6 home teams covering. If you had parlayed all 6 on the spread, you probably would have wound up with somewhere around a plus 4,600 ticket. So goes to show you, whenever you're in doubt, just bet the home team on the spread and you have a reasonably decent chance if this year has been any indication. You're talking about a bet type that is cashed over 2/3 of the time, whether you're looking at the money line or the handicap. It has just been incredible. Now, for the money line favorites, last week was a bit of a setback. In fact, underdogs won more often. 4 wins, 2 losses. First time since week 4 where we've had more underdogs win than favorites. Week 8, we had a 3-3 split, but that was the last time that underdogs have had a relatively successful result. So now at 70% on the season for favorites, 30% on the season for underdogs. A firm reminder that, those underdog odds, they present a lot of value right now. How much time do we have left to capitalize on any edge there before things potentially revert to back to what they started out the season as if underdogs keep up this form? So we also had an interesting week from the over-under front as well. So we had 2 games go over last week that both depended on late 2-point conversions. Had those not gone across, we could have potentially seen a week of all 6 unders. So it really just goes to show you the ebbs and flows that we've seen with the over-under on a week-to-week basis throughout the years that we've done this. So that's where those stand currently. Those are some of the highlights from this past week. So we have a little bit of a guide as to things to think about when we're selecting these games. All right, here are our team-by-team trends. Notably, atop that spread leaderboard, we now have 4 teams tied for the top mark. Vegas, who was 8-1 once upon a time against the spread, now down to 8-4, where they are tied with teams like Green Bay, Orlando, and Tulsa as the teams that have most respected bettors' coins when it comes to the spread. A few other teams there above 500 in San Diego, Tucson, and Fishers. On the other side of the spectrum, you have teams like Iowa and San Antonio that are worse in the league at 3-9 against the spread. Iowa has dropped 4 in a row against the spread as well to drop to that mark. And Northern Arizona right there, 1 game ahead. Kind of rounding out that reverse podium, if you will. On the over-under front, Orlando remains the strongest over team, 9-3 record, highest average scoring game in the IFL this season at 96 a contest. Perhaps surprisingly, Tulsa, a team that you wouldn't normally associate with overs, they are now suddenly 8-4 to the over after 5 straight of their games have exceeded their respective totals. Vegas right there as well. San Diego, each of those teams averaging over 90 points in their games per contest. On the other side, you have 3 teams tied at 4-8 for the most efficient teams to the under. Those are the Arizona Rattlers, Tucson Sugar Skulls, and the Quad City Steamwheelers, if you can believe it. So now that we're 75% of the way through the season, we have to answer that question with the body of results here. Are we expecting much of the same? Or do things become a little bit different, especially as some of these other alternative leagues are winding down? We've seen the UFL have their championship last weekend. The NAL championship was this past weekend. So we see some of those teams migrate over this away? It'll be a very interesting question to provide answers to as they arise. All right, let's highlight some notable streaks heading into this week. On the spread, we've seen Tucson cover in 5 consecutive games. Orlando has actually covered in 3 consecutive games. So we'll keep our eye out for those teams. As for Vegas and Iowa, they actually carry now the longest ATS losing streaks in the league, with Iowa at 4 and Vegas at 3. On the over-under front, Iowa, amidst a crazy drought offensively, 3-0 to the under, whereas Tulsa, with their offensive form, 45+ in each of their last 5 games, all of which have cashed the over. So we'll keep an eye out for some of these streaks at 2 to see if they'll reach 3 and get highlighted for next week's version of the show. Our yearly results by team so far pretty much keeps up a theme that we've had throughout the season that's emerged. Half of the teams, we know ball. Half of the teams, evidently, we do not. Fortunately, there is still time for us to make our move to try to get as many of these teams as possible to that 7th win. That is our goal for each of these teams. In the case of the Northern Arizona Wranglers and the Fishers Freight, we cannot lose anymore. So might that be something that we look at in order to keep an eye on that season goal? All right. let's get to our disclaimers before diving into our big board for the night. The lines and odds that we're going to be using are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook right here in the Mecca. This series is rooted purely in entertainment, curiosity, fun, and advanced metrics, if we're being honest. This is not meant to be construed as betting advice or anything along that nature. As we've seen before, there's no such thing as a guarantee or a lock in the sports wagering world. So do be careful if you play. If you are thinking about testing your luck, please do so legally and responsibly. You must be 21 years or older in most jurisdictions to play. If you would like to tail or fade my selections, more than welcome to do so, but please practice safe gaming habits if you are. That includes setting a budget in terms of both time and money. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you feel like you or a loved one is having issues with problem gaming, don't be afraid to consult the many resources out there that provide assistance in that area. HaveAGameplay.org is one example. ResponsiblePlay.org is another. Not to mention the bevy of resources that each individual state offers to try to get people the help that they need. So if you feel like you're teetering on that boat a little bit, know that you have support, you are not alone, and that help is out there. With that said, we're moving right along here. It is time to dive into the big board. And we have Cody Holloway hopping on. Welcome in. Hope you're having a great Wednesday. And I'll need just a moment here to bring up this big board. Again, working off just one screen for the day. I believe this is it. And there we go. Move this over this way as well. All right, let's dive right into it. So, first game of the week is Saturday at 5 o'clock Eastern. This is the Green Bay Blizzard hosting their regular season home finale against the Fishers Freight. Projected to be a close one. Green Bay is -2.5 on the spread. The over-under is 93 in the hook. The money line offers Fishers at -124. Green Bay -148 in a matchup that could very well be a potential first-round preview. Fishers entering this game with a record of 7 wins and 6 losses. They have won each of their past 2 and looking to avoid a 3-game season series sweep at the hands of the Green Bay Blizzard, who have already beat them in this building 51-42 and out in Fishers 57-52. Both single-digit affairs, but Fishers, they're going to hang their hat on the argument of it's tough to beat a team 3 times in the same season. Now, Fishers does come into this game with some injury concerns, particularly on the offensive side of the football. We saw them hold out Dominic Roberto with what they're saying is an undisclosed injury. JT Stokes, his season is over after being placed on season IR earlier this month. So a little bit shorthanded are the Fishers Freight. So we're going to have to see how that impacts their weekly ceiling. I don't think it impacts their floor too much. I do still believe that Felix Harper is the right man for the job at quarterback. Josiah King slowly but surely getting his legs back underneath him after a midseason injury early this year. That kind of derailed a hot start for him. And then the Freight defense, they've showed up very, very well in the past few weeks here. But they're going to have to see if they can hold Green Bay to under 50 for the first time this season. Speaking of the Green Bay Blizzard, they have the bye week. Came at a great time for them with Liam Thompson kind of nursing a little bit of an injury that he suffered a few weeks ago in Quad City. Apparently he was okay to play in the game a couple weeks ago against the Jacksonville Sharks. Still at a 54-point effort there. So he just has that much more time to heal. as do some of the rest of Green Bay star players. That includes guys like DeMylan Brown, Drayshawn Hudson, Trayvon Alexander, each of whom have really flourished under Thompson with that Green Bay offense. Not to be forgotten in the shuffle, their defense, which is a top 5 unit in the league, something that they didn't really have in much of a consistent stretch last season. So Green Bay feels like they have all the pieces together. They are currently the top dog in the East. A win tonight in their home finale would keep them in that spot for at least this week. So let's dive in to my prediction for this outing. Cody, I see your comment here at Green Bay -2.5. You, my friend, have read my mind. And perhaps a little bit of this is rooted in a little bit of emotion as well. But how do you look at the numbers with Green Bay at home and not have your jaw drop 5 feet to the floor? The Blizzard have covered in 6 of their 7 home games this season. They are 25-8-1 against the spread all time at home. And honestly, this is the final time that we have until August that we're going to be able to capitalize on this opportunity. Now, I must give the caveat here. Fishers, I feel like they can win this game. If enough goes their way, they could even hold this to a 1 or 2 point margin of defeat. But I mean, how can you go against Green Bay's form? I'm riding it. Cody's riding it. This is going to be the rare week starting mortal Megamax of the week, and we'll see if Green Bay can keep up that form. By the way, the only time where Green Bay failed to cover a home spread this year, it was a buzzer-beating touchdown where the Orlando Pirates made it a 3-point margin of defeat. Had that score not gone across, Green Bay would be spotless on the spread at home this year. So we ride. All right, moving on with Saturday's slate, an 8 o'clock kick between the Tulsa Oilers, winners of 5 straight, going up against the 1-win, 1-11 Iowa Barnstormers. Tulsa is favored by 3 touchdowns here, 20.5. The over-under is 82 in the hook. The money line gives Tulsa at -1350. And if you still believe Iowa can win a game, plus 800 on the money line if you are so tempted. And Tulsa, we had kind of hinted a little bit at the idea of a season turnaround for them. They had some rough luck in some tough losses earlier this season. They have put all of those firmly to bed. They have won 5 straight. The offense under TJ Edwards, Caleb Ramsey, and Jerminic Smith have looked to be completely unstoppable at times with explosive playmaking, creative play calls. They have scored 45+ in each of their last 5 games, and they'll have another opportunity here in Des Moines against a bit of a snake-bitten Barnstormer team to keep those times rolling. It's hard not to be impressed with what Tulsa is doing right now. On the Iowa Barnstormer side, there's going to be questions to answer here. Dante Villas-Santos has had a handful of starts now and really hasn't shown much aside from the one that resulted in their lone victory against the Quad City Steamwheelers. So they've also got Noah Bodden on the roster. He was kind of forced into action last week. With a full week of practice, is Bodden the guy that hopefully gives this Andre Coles-led team a desperately needed spark? They've got some good pieces in place on that offense. They've got guys like DeMonte Martin, David Elder, Curtis Ravenel, Donald McKinney, each of whom have had their moments thus far this season. It just hasn't translated into anything consistent as a unit throughout the season. As far as the defense goes, still remains a struggle. They've been struck with injury. They've had guys go in that didn't start the season with the team. So for Iowa, you're essentially looking for anything that you can to try to come up with some sort of positive result here. They did nearly get the win against Tulsa last season in this building before blowing an 18-point lead with about a few minutes to go in that one. So maybe they get the strong start here, and maybe they finish the job this time around. Who knows? Anything can happen in the 50-yard indoor war. My pick for this game, though, I'm not overthinking it, guys. Take the hot team versus the not team. Tulsa minus 20 and a half. The Iowa offense as a whole this season, even with some relatively strong games at the beginning of the season, their per game average is right around 27, a number that they actually have not reached in nearly a month. The last time that they made it to 27 was actually the meeting between the Oilers at Tulsa, where they needed a last-second touchdown just to make that mark. So Tulsa should have no problem cracking 50 in this game. Anything outside of that they can do to put more points up on the board only substantiates this pick that much more. It is always a little bit of an iffy situation. These Tulsa-Iowa games the past couple years have seen some crazy bets go sideways. But if you're looking for a bet that passes the eye test, it's look no further than this Tulsa one. Minus 20 and a half there. Moving further into the desert here, San Antonio and Vegas will do battle for the second time this season. The Nighthawks have not covered in their past 3 games, but that is not dissuading the bookies from making them heavily favored here. In fact, 16.5-point favorites, with the over-under at 83 in the hook. On the money line, San Antonio plus 550 and Vegas minus 800. Now, if you are San Antonio, you're sitting at 4-8. You're 2 games behind a playoff spot. This arguably has to be a must-win game for Jonathan Bain's Gunslingers, especially considering Tucson, the team that they are chasing down, has already beat the Vegas Nighthawks in a game earlier this month. So probably has to be a monkey see, monkey do sort of situation there for San Antonio to retain hope in their playoff prospects. So far, I would expect the third start of the season for Zachary Calzada, even though he was ejected from last week's game. I don't think that's going to result in any suspensions or changes apart from the San Antonio personnel. But so far, we have seen outings of 74 points, and we have seen 23. So essentially that massive floor and that lowly ceiling that we've seen from San Antonio's offense throughout the balance of this season. They do have good pieces, though. They have Zach Patterson at running back. They have Deion Cook, who returned from injury last week, along with some big options like Derrick Rose and Austin Upshaw. So each of those players have had their fair share of good form this season. They did put up 35 earlier this season in a game against the Vegas Nighthawks. So the question for San Antonio, their defense has been good, but they have been exposed in some of these upper echelon matchups. I think about their losses to Green Bay, Jacksonville, Vegas earlier in the season. Each of those top 3 offenses, each of them had relatively no problem hanging 50-plus on San Antonio. So tall task for them against the reigning champions that have lost 2 in a row. So for Mike Davis, Jaden DeLaura, and the Vegas Nighthawks, this matchup back at home presents an opportunity to get back on the straight and narrow. Offensively, they seem to have all of their pieces intact. Josh Tomas, Quentin Randolph, Deshaun Stoudemire, the 3 highlight skill position players of that team. While a defense that features guys like Lorenzo Hernandez, Maurice Jackson, Clifton Duck, we're going to have to see if those guys whip together a bit of a comeback effort here. They did limit San Diego to 43 despite the loss, but we're going to have to see what they can do against this relatively unknown wild card that is the San Antonio Gunslinger offense. Pivoting over to my pick for this game, I have the over at 83.5. And this is a pick deeply rooted in a potential get back to their average effort by the Vegas Nighthawks. They've already hung 62 in the previous matchup. I believe that was around April, May, that game was. But any over-under that's set in the low to mid 80s like this one is ripe for a team like like Vegas, who is 8-4 to the over as it stands this season, to go and clear this out. Now, San Antonio's offense is the perfect antithesis. Where we saw, they struggled at 23 points last week. If they do that again, it certainly puts this bet in a little bit of jeopardy. And if you are a believer that might happen, maybe the minus 16.5 would be the play for you. I know Cody's bringing it up here. I certainly don't hate the pick, and we'll get to that in just a little bit as well. But here I'm going to trust the numbers. I'm going to trust Vegas to carry this pretty much 2/3 of the way, like I know they're capable of. And we'll see if San Antonio can pick up the rest. So we will go for points, featuring a game with one of the highest upside offenses in the IFL. Over 83.5, San Antonio and Vegas. Wrapping up Saturday's slate is a matchup between the New Mexico Chupacabras and the Arizona Rattlers. Arizona and Kevin Guy coming off 2 straight losses. They are heavily favored here by 21.5. The over-under is 79.5. On the money line, New Mexico plus 900, Arizona minus 1,600. For New Mexico, there's at least a little bit of a positive vibe heading into this matchup. He just snapped an 8-game losing streak. Granted, it was against the Wranglers, but you won in Jerome Haywood's head coaching debut. Unfortunately, the matchup gets a lot rougher here against not only a playoff contender and a legitimate threat for an IFL championship, but you're also on the road again, which those games for the Chupacabras have just been positively dreadful. In fact, the Chupacabras have averaged fewer than 20 points per game in their 7 outings so far this season outside of the Land Enchanted. That includes the 2 neutral site games that were at the IFL Cup Showcase out in New Jersey. So we're going to have to see what direction New Mexico takes at quarterback. Donovan Porter drew the start last week. Is this a week where you turn to Yvonne Rucker? Or do you stick with Porter in this matchup after he led a 4th quarter comeback? So going to have to see. LaJames White, very underrated running back in my opinion. He has been the Chupacabra workhorse for the majority of the season. The receiving options took a bit of a hit with the release of C.J. Jefferson, but you still have guys like Arthur Jackson, Damon Street, and Isaiah Crocker leading the way there. Defensively, we saw some breakouts from guys like Greg Dent and Gleason Spreewell, so we'll see if those two continue to emerge as leaders for a Chupacabra defense looking to build some momentum here to close out 2026. Now, Arizona in a little bit of a slump themselves, and is that 2-quarterback system between Drew Powell and Max Myler finally catching up to them? Granted, they're 2 MVP-winning championship caliber quarterbacks, but there is going to have to come a choice where you pivot to one or the other. We've seen the Rattlers do that a little bit with Drew Powell, who has gotten the majority of starts since May, but we've also seen that turnover bug that plagued Powell in his prior time with the Rattlers. So is that something where Coach Kevin Guy may turn to Max Myler and say, hey, take care of the football, lead the offense, and we should come out victorious more often than not? Whoever does take the helm moving forward is going to have guys like Corey Reed Jr., Keenan Hambrick, Kamani Clark, Ron Brown Jr. on an offense that is a top 5 unit in the league in most offensive categories, whereas the defense has been laying the hurt on teams throughout the season. They are actually the league's leading scoring defense per game at about 37 points per game, I believe the number was, entering this week. So my pick for this game, Cody has Arizona minus 21.5, which I will say makes a lot of sense, especially if you're banking on a big-time comeback by the Rattlers. That response performance after 2 straight defeats. Looking at the last meeting between these two, Arizona dominated and won by 46. That game being the first installment of the 4-part brawl at the mall in mid-May. I do like that bet. I'm actually going to go with another bet that kind of rides in lockstep with that one. Our first under pick in quite some time. I got this one at under 79.5. Obviously, a very scary pick when you know that Arizona can put up 60 points at will on a good day. But on the flip side of the coin, what has New Mexico's offense done on the road? And when that answer is score less than 20 points on a per game basis, that's a scary thought if you're taking the over on this game. I understand the argument to it, but there comes a time where you have to factor in the teams that are involved as part of that. The other big thing, we mentioned Arizona, a very good team to the under this season, 8-4 to the under so far this season. New Mexico games on the road, 6-1 to the under, with that only over in that sequence being at 67.5 when San Antonio made that total all by themselves. So my underbetting has not been great this season, but I believe this one has a puncher's chance to put an end to that run. So New Mexico, Arizona, I like the under. Moving on to Sunday, we've got a couple of 4 o'clock games. We'll lead things off with the Orlando Pirates taking on the Quad City Steamwheelers. Big matchup as it pertains to the Eastern Conference playoff picture. We have Orlando, the favored team in Moline, but only by 1.5 points. And notice those slight difference in odds there. The over-under is 89.5. The money line is Orlando minus 125 and Quad City at plus the nickel. The last time these two teams met was another fiercely contested game where the underdog was favored at home, or the underdog was at home slightly. Orlando getting the job done there, 49-46. And for the Pirates, their push to a return to the playoffs gets one step closer if they are able to stage a win here in Quad City, which is something that they actually have never done in franchise history, having lost in this building at Vibrant Arena in each of the past 3 years. Now, Orlando's story of the season has been that battle between an offense with ridiculous upside pace and tempo and a defense that has been very leaky at times. I believe when I looked at their stats for the season, they average 48 per game scoring. They allow 47 per game. So at 7-5, they've certainly had to clutch their way to that record throughout various points of the season, but history only looks at that win-loss record, and you know what? They're 7-5, and they have the inside track to making a return to the postseason after missing out last season. The offense continues to impress under first-year signal caller Paxton DeLaurent. Puka Williams doing his thing at tailback, and the 3-headed monster at receiver between Thomas Owens, Nyquan Murray, and Teo Redding serving as the consistent backbone for a Pirate team that has had its fair share of change in different areas throughout this season. As for Quad City, They have gotten their playoff hopes back on track with 2 straight wins prior to last week's bye. Big story for them. Daquan Neal was hurt 2 weeks ago, couldn't return to the game against Iowa. Was the bye week enough for him to heal up for this massive Eastern Conference showdown? Also highlighting for the Steam Wheelers, Jared Ware Jr. at running back, along with Trenton Barnes. Receivers, Keon Williams profiles as a terrific opportunity for him to break out on the scoreboard in this one. The same goes for Kevon Rudd, making a much talked about run at some IFL history in what has been an outstanding IFL career thus far. A defense that has had its inconsistencies this season. Still very talented on paper with guys like Chima Dunga, Keyshawn Moore, along with Nick Gibson in the secondary. So the Quad City Orlando rivalry, the Steam Wheelers Pirates rivalry, always a good one. I'm expecting this installment to be no different. Now, my pick in this game, if you guys know me, you know I'm an auto fade with Orlando on the road. So Quad City at plus 105, I am more than willing to roll the dice on this pick. Even where we don't know the status necessarily of Daquan Neal, I think the going concern is that he does start. But even if he doesn't, there is an overflowing wave of historic precedents where this bet is the best value on the board. For starters, as we mentioned, Orlando has not won in this building yet. The road historically has been a struggle for them. And as favorites on the spread on the road, the Orlando Pirates are an apathetic 2-15 against the spread. Whether you believe that goes to 2-16 or not, the end game is, worst case scenario, Quad City would lose by 1. But that is about as narrow of a margin as you can get without Quad City just going out and winning this game outright. Quad City's strongest football has been in this building. They have covered the spread in every single one of their games at Vibrant Arena with the exception of one, which is still a 2-point win against the Tucson Sugar Skulls. So the plus 105 dart throw is one that I am going to take here. We have been relatively successful with picking underdogs this season. We haven't done it all that often, but when we have outperformed the population. So here's to hoping that this pick continues on that upward trajectory. All right, moving to the desert, Prescott Valley, where the Wranglers will host the Tucson Sugar Skulls in a matchup that bookies thinking are going to be pretty close. Tucson's on the road, but being favored by a field goal plus the hook at minus 112 odds. The over-under is 81.5. On the money line, Tucson's minus 175, and Northern Arizona at home plus 145. Now, let's talk about Tucson here as the visiting team first. What other way can we describe them as arguably the hottest team in the IFL right now? They have won 4 straight games. They have covered in 5 straight games. Absolutely sterling perfect in the Jerome Johnson era. And the Sugar Skulls have proved that they are the type of team where if one aspect of their game isn't necessarily working, the other can go in and bail them out. We saw that with Tucson's defense, overcoming a pair of early Jerome Johnson interceptions to keep the Sugar Skulls firmly in that game and ending up turning an early 14-point deficit into a 7-point upset victory. And that revitalization has rekindled guys like Brandon Mackey, Javion Lofton, Jatavian Tolles. Defensively, guys like Tyqua's Legs, Dejimon Brooks, Breon Murray, and Ahmad Lyons. You know, this Tucson Sugar Skull team, you have to be a little bit worried that they're peaking at the right time, or peaking at the wrong time, say. But they had to turn around their season. They had to do it quickly. What was once a 2-6 team looking at another absence from the playoffs is now firmly on track for their first postseason action since 2023. As for the Northern Arizona Wranglers, they have also failed to make the playoffs since that 2023 campaign. They have officially been eliminated, and now they have made the change at head coach from Ron James to Larry Hendricks, who had previously served as the team's defensive coordinator. He will now be taking the charge of the team on an interim basis for the remainder of the 2026 season. Anthony Garrett, he's had some impressive showings so far this season, a bunch of which have happened in Findlay Toyota Center. So the Wranglers are hoping that he can get back to form where he can exhibit a little bit more of that running game that's made him such a versatile option, along with some downfield passing. The challenge is going to be there for an offense that's a little bit in flux right now. It's been a little bit of a committee between Benjamin Omaebu and Nolan Sussel at running back. Guys like Kobe Smith and Karan Ashley have taken their turns in terms of establishing themselves as top receiving options for the rookie Garrett. While the defense, they showed signs of life last week against New Mexico. They're going to need a little bit more of that if they are to put an upset bid on Saturday afternoon. We'll have to see if Trevera Sparrow makes his return from suspension to go in and support guys like Davia Gabor, along with Kieran Page, as part of that Northern Arizona secondary. So it's going to be an interesting game. As many of you know, we like to ride the streaks on this show. I feel like it's the perfect opportunity to go ahead and back Tucson at that -3.5 number. I feel like these lines are taking the full season's results and lumping them all into a sensible prediction, which I believe that, 3.5, 81.5 are doing reasonably well. But I have to put a little bit more stock in what these teams have done recently, particularly the Tucson Sugar Skulls, whose body of work so far this season, at least in the past month, 16-point victory against Orlando, 4-point victory against Vegas. They trounced New Mexico by, I believe it was a 26-point margin, and then the 4-point win against, or the 7-point win against Arizona last week. So all 4 of their wins have broken past this number. And honestly, I don't see why a double-digit victory is not within the reach of possibility here, given the way that Tucson has played. They just look like a completely confident team, completely different from the one that took the field for the first couple months of the season. As for Northern Arizona, could they get the fire head coach boost that New Mexico got last week? They certainly very well could. But Tucson, to me right now, is the superior team. I don't see any reason to deviate from this -3.5. If you're concerned about getting hooked by a field goal here, -175, not a terribly steep price to pay. But I'm going to stick with my original line of thought here. Let's see if Tucson can take care of business and get another victory by 4+ points. Final game of the week, Sunday night indoor football, taking place in Florida for a second consecutive week, this time being hosted by Duval County at ViStar Veterans Memorial Arena. The San Diego Strike Force, the current leaders of the Western Conference, taking on the Sharks. Jacksonville is favored at home by 1.5. The over-under is 90.5. The money line is San Diego at +114 and Jacksonville at -135. San Diego, they've reached that top spot in the conference, but I think Taylor Jenniser, the head coach, will be the first to tell you the best has yet to come for a team that has kind of been forced by the media into week-by-week prove-it mode. And I feel like that's kind of strengthened them, even though the metrics might not necessarily jump off the page the way that they might with Vegas and Arizona. But what matters is winning games, and San Diego has done that at a higher rate in their 11 games so far. then have the Nighthawks and the Arizona Rattlers, and that's why they're the top dog in the conference at the moment. San Diego, their main highlight over the past couple weeks has been the return of Eddie Vander, who looks completely refreshed, fully 100% in his return from injury. He had a 4-touchdown game against the Northern Arizona Wranglers a couple weeks ago. Chipped in a couple other touchdowns in San Diego's upset win against the Vegas Nighthawks last week. Impressive receiving options through and through. Dallas Daniels along with Shane Hooks. Jalen Sample should make his return back following a 1-game suspension. So you could argue San Diego's getting stronger here. And with guys like Royce C., Elijah Reed, and Herman Smith manning that secondary along with, I believe it's Alan Anderson along the defensive line, who had an impressive game against Vegas last week. San Diego is fully rearing to make a charge for a championship. As for Jacksonville, they've dropped a couple in a row. They have made a well-documented quarterback change to Sammy Edwards in place of the departed James Cahoon. And even though Jacksonville lost 54-42 to Orlando last week, they got some things going under Edwards in that second half, which featured 35 Jacksonville points. So they got into a little bit of a rhythm. They got Jimmy Robinson and the rest of that running game involved. Guys like Jaden Stoshak and Red Douglas had impressive games. Marquell Wade is easily another part of that rotation, easily able to pop off high upside game in his right. And we'll have to see if this return home for the Sharks helps propel a defense that has struggled in the past couple weeks. They gave up 50-plus in Orlando and Green Bay. So do they get back to that, low 30s form that we've seen a number of times throughout this season in what should profile as a playoff caliber matchup? The Stars will be shining in Jacksonville on Sunday night. My pick for this game is our second underdog moneyline selection of the week. I have San Diego at plus 114. It is a dice roll, I will admit. It's never easy fading a team at home, especially this season. But, San Diego has proven whatever narrative against them wrong throughout the majority of this season. And they have been one of the better performing road teams historically in the IFL the past few years. So why not this one against the Jacksonville team that's still looking for a little bit of footing as a full unit as part of their transition in personnel. So I say we go with it. We're going with another underdog moneyline pick. If we get one of those right, we net gain on those pair of selections. So let's bank on San Diego to keep their win streak going at plus 114, a reasonably solid number. All right, let's pivot back and discuss my 3-leg parlay attempt of the week. And I'm going to start with one where Cody mentioned about the Tulsa, Iowa game, tempted to go with the under. And that is the choice that I have made for Tulsa and Iowa to lead this thing off. And this kind of works along the converse argument that my overpick for San Antonio Vegas did, where in that game we took an over because Vegas's offense is ridiculously good. Well, now we're taking the under in this one because Iowa's offense has been ridiculously bad. Past 3 weeks, they have scored 37 points combined. Yeah, that is basically 12.4 or whatever points per game. That is not going to suffice in really any level of professional football, let alone the hyper-scoring driven indoor football world. So, I mean, even if Tulsa gets to their average of 27 for the season, Tulsa would need 56. And I believe the ideal game script here for the Oilers is that they get out to that early lead, and then they pretty much do whatever they can to run that remaining 30 minutes off the clock as fast as humanly possible. We've seen Iowa as a team as well rely almost entirely on their running game, which could constrict the amount of possessions that we see throughout this game. I could very well see a scenario that gives us a number less than the per game average of 20, 21 total possession split between the two teams. So that's how I'm going to lead this thing off. It's going to be an under to begin this parlay. The middle piece of it is going to be Vegas at minus 16.5. Cody brought up this pick earlier, and I feel like this is absolutely the get-right game for Vegas to come back to this. They started off 8-1 against the spread on the season. Supremely strong, maybe unsustainably so if we're being honest with ourselves, but for those who are still backing them after being left to dry for the past few weeks, this one's a reasonably solid go in my opinion. It is contingent a little bit on the Vegas Nighthawks returning to form. I do feel like getting over 50 points is necessary for them to get it here, but they already went to Alamo Town and hung 62 on the Gunslingers earlier this season. And to be honest, if they are firing on all cylinders, I see no reason for them to not be able to repeat that effort in this one. The ask for Zachary Calzada and the San Antonio Gunslinger offense is going to be equally as tough here on the road against a team that has one of the highest upside defenses in the indoor football league. So San Antonio minus 16.5 to serve as that middle piece. The final leg, Sunday afternoon, I have Orlando and Quad City going over 89.5. And this pick banks on Orlando's 9-3 over record. We have seen their games average just about 100 points per game. And I believe if Quad City wants to win this, they're going to have to comply with the Pirates and engage in that shootout. So the last meeting between these two teams at the Kia Center wound up 49-46. Orlando's defense has had its fair share of struggles covering top receivers this season. Not exactly the best news considering the likes of Keon Williams and Kevin Rudd on the other side of the ledger. You know that Orlando's offense is going to get theirs. They're going to try to drive the pace and the tempo as they often have throughout this season. I could very well see this game making it into the century mark again, as both teams desperately fight to try to either fortify their playoff position or reestablish themselves among the conference's top four. So the over 89.5 there will close things out and result in a three-leg parlay at plus 595 odds, so same odds that we had last time. A $10 wager, if successful, would return $69.57. So tailing this bet or fading if you want to take the opposite selections, you do you. Starting things off with Saturday evening's Tulsa, Iowa game under 82.5. The 9 p.m. Saturday Vegas minus 16.5. And if both of those go according to plan, Orlando Quad City over 89 in the hook to bring home what would be our fourth winning parlay of the season. All righty, so that is going to wrap it up for the previews and the picks segment of tonight. But before we go, I promised you a big announcement, and I am going to deliver it right here. And that revolves the Indoor Football League National Championship game. Tickets will be going on sale to the general public on Friday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. That is 6 a.m. Arizona time. Again, that is going to be on Friday the 26th for the general public. And if you happen to be a season ticket holder for any of the 14 IFL teams, there is a pre-sale event going on right now on Ticketmaster. You may have received a special promotion code either through a text or email. If you have not gotten that code and want to get the first dibs on seats, I would recommend reaching out to your local ticket rep to see if you can get that. But yeah, the pre-sale goes on for the next couple of days here. But once Friday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern rolls around, tickets go on sale. So get your seats locked in early if you're going to be making the trip out to Tucson the weekend of August 16th. That is a Sunday. That game will be at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Arizona time. I will be there. I hope to see many of you there as well. I've already talked to a few folks that'll be making the trip. It is going to be an absolute blast. So that emphatic notification will wrap things up for us tonight. If you are going to be placing bets this week, I wish you the very best. And as always, I will see you at the cashier. Have an amazing weekend.